Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. For the past year I've been experimenting with fermenting my own brews. I've made apple cider, pear cider, various wild fruit sodas, and I've made one batch of mead. Today I thought I'd make a second batch, so I thought I'd show you the process. Towards the end of the video I'll be showing you my first batch, which is now fully fermented. I'll also be discussing ways that you can vary the flavour with fruit and do a secondary ferment, or you can also make the brew medicinal. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a simple mead, which is just honey and water. I'm using my own raw honey, which hasn't been heated at all, so still contains an abundance of wild yeast. These yeasts become active when water is added to the honey. You do find people using various proportions of honey to water, but today I'm going to be using 1 part honey with 3 parts water. I'm going to be making today's mead in this jar, which I've already washed with hot soapy water. You don't need to sterilise it at all because you are relying on natural yeasts and organisms. So it doesn't really matter as long as it's really clean. I'm just going to mark my jar so I know how much honey to put in. So it's 1 part honey, so I'll put honey up to there. And 1, 2, 3 parts water, and then the rest will be headspace, which you need just to allow for the fermentation process. It will become quite bubbly in the next 2 weeks as it ferments. So now I just need to pop my honey in up to that mark. My honey has actually crystallized, which happens with raw honeys and cool temperatures. But it doesn't matter for this process because it will dissolve in the water. It would be easier if it was liquid, you could just pour it in, but that's okay. It's going to be a bit of a guess actually whether it's up to the mark or not. Lucky it doesn't really matter too much. So it's a bit of a guesstimate, but I think that'll be fine. Now I've got my honey in my jar. I just need to add water up to the mark. Now I'm using rainwater. It's non-chlorinated. If you only have access to chlorinated water, then just put some in a container and leave it overnight and the chlorine should release sufficiently to use in your mead. Right, so all that's left to do now is just give this a good stir and make sure we get all the honey dissolved. If you had liquid honey, this process would of course be a lot quicker. Now that the honey's all dissolved, I'm just going to cover that over to make sure no flies get in. I'm just using a paper towel, but you could just use a cloth and an elastic band to hold it on. I'll be leaving that at the end of my kitchen bench out of direct sunlight. Over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be stirring that twice a day. Oops, not enough headroom. I think my mead's active now. My mead has been fermenting now for about 14 days and the bubbling has started to settle a little bit, although it is still quite bubbly, but certainly not what it got to at about, I think, day 8 or day 9. So it's ready to move on to the next step. The sugars in honey are both glucose and fructose, and it's in the first 2 weeks that the glucose is being converted into alcohol by the yeasts. A lot of people do enjoy their mead at this point and don't take it any further. So I thought I'd give it a try now and see what it's like. It's really sweet still because all of that fructose hasn't been broken down, and it is quite fizzy on the tongue, so it's quite enjoyable actually. The fructose, which is still in the mix at this point, will be broken down more slowly than the glucose. So it takes about 6 months for it to fully ferment. To ferment this for a further 6 months, it is best to reduce the amount of oxygen exposure on the surface as much as possible. So a narrower necked vessel would probably be better, but I'm just going to top this up with this honey water made in the same proportions as what we did the original brew. So that's 1 part honey, 3 parts water. Top it right up to the top here, and then I'm going to put on my airlock. Oxygen can promote the growth of a bacteria that converts the alcohol into acid. So virtually by doing that, you're making vinegar. So in the next 6 months, I don't want to find that I've got vinegar. I want to find that I've got a nice alcoholic mead. So I'm going to top that up. I've dissolved some honey in water. So I'm just going to fill that to the top. So that's right up to the neck there now. So that's as much as I can do with reducing the surface area to oxygen. And I'm going to pop on this airlock, and that will control the amount of oxygen that gets in. This will still release the carbon dioxide that the fermentation will be producing over the next 6 months. And here we go. And the surface will be protected from the oxygen. So I just need to top that up with a little bit of water. And that's all we need so that the bubbles can just come out of that. That mead is ready to leave for the 6 months now. I'll pop that in a dark, cool place and come back to it in 6 months' time. But what I'll show you now is a batch that I've already got ready. This is my first batch of mead that I made about 6 months ago. I've kept a note on the front here of when I first made it and the 2 weeks that I stirred it for, and then when it was going to be ready. So it's ready about now. What I need to do today is rack it, which basically means I'm going to siphon off all this liquid here and leave the layer at the bottom. Now this layer is called lees, and it's just a collection of the dead yeast that sinks to the bottom over time. Don't throw that out if you're giving this a go. You can actually use that in cooking, like stews and soups and breads. It is quite nutritious, and so if you use it in your cooking, it will just add that extra bit of goodness. I've got some bottles here that I've just washed out, and I'm going to rack the liquid into these. Today I'm going to be making a secondary ferment with blueberries. In addition to the blueberry second ferment, I'm going to be trying a medicinal. Today I'm going to be using turmeric and pepper in my mead and leaving that for a couple of weeks. The active ingredient in turmeric is curcumin, and the pepper helps improve its absorption and bioavailability, and that can be used as an anti-inflammatory. So it's time to get racking. Now, I've racked in the past and I've not been very successful with it. I often get piles of my brew all over the floor, so I'm hoping not to do that today. I don't want to waste any, but it will be what it is. Let's get going. Oh, it smells pretty delicious. All right, there we go. 1 bottle full. We're getting closer to the bottom, so I'll just make sure it's in a different container in case I do get some of those lees. We can always just sit it and then strain it out of this bottle as well. But okay, so that'll be good for my blueberries. I'm going to swish it around to get those lees. I'm just going to put it into this jar and it will settle out again, and then I'll use it from that. I'll just seal these ones up. If you find that you don't particularly like the flavour of your mead at this point, don't throw it out. Leave it in the cupboard. You know, it's good for years down the track. The more alcohol in it, the longer it will keep for. But give it another try in another 6 months or so, and the flavours do develop over time. So if you don't like it now, give it a try then, and you might kind of find it's mellowed out a little bit. So I'll be popping those in the cupboard. I'll be just popping that aside to see how that settles, and I'll give the yeast a go in cooking. So that's my finished mead there. I'll store that as is, but today I'm going to use these and develop the flavours a bit further. I've got some blueberries here. They have been frozen. It's probably better to use fruit that has been frozen because the cells get broken down in that freezing process and they're more likely to release their flavour. So what I might do is actually just crush them a little bit more. Just squash them a bit so that they do release their flavours, and I'm just going to pop that in there. Just turn it sort of upside down, maybe twice a day, because what we're doing here is a secondary ferment. With adding in the extra sugars from the fruit, it will kick the fermentation in again for a short period. So sort of around 10 days time, and that will be ready. But each day after I've given it a bit of a turn, I'll just open it up to let out any gases. So that one's good to leave. So onto our medicinal. So basically you just add in some turmeric, you know, just a little knob, and slice it up, pop that in. Now there's not a lot of sugars in there, so I'm not expecting it to really kick into fermenting, so I haven't left much headroom in this one. It's really just going to steep and release the curcumin into the liquid. So I'll just pop the lid on. I'll be just giving that a bit of a turn twice a day as well. It's been about 10 days now, so my blueberry and my turmeric meads should be ready to try. First of all, I've just got to strain them. I've got a little funnel that has a strainer attached there to make it easy. I really love the colour this one's turned out. Now I'll give that fruit a try. I don't know if I'll be able to use it in anything, but if I don't, the chickens will enjoy that. It smells quite spicy. Now for a bit of a taste test. I'm going to try this blueberry one first. You can taste the fruit in that mead. It is a really sweet, pleasant taste and quite enjoyable. That's my blueberry. That was nice and sweet. And I'm anticipating my turmeric blackberry will give me sort of a bit more of a punch. That's surprisingly really good. It's got the turmeric flavour, but it's also got a hint of the pepper without being too strong, which kind of surprises me a little bit. That's really good. This will make a great anti-inflammatory. So I've tasted my blueberry and my turmeric, which just leaves me to taste my 6-month-old mead. It's kind of like a sweet sherry. So if you like sweet sherry, mead's for you. What I'm going to do is leave these 2 bottles for a bit longer and just see how the flavour develops. I might be enjoying this one now, and also my blueberry, and I've got my medicinal there too. There are so many great products you can make with fermenting honey. I hope I've inspired you to give it a go, and if I have, please hit the like button and let me know down in the comments what you made. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.